The second operation that I've selected here is a new operation, okay? A new operation that is inside of our connections editor. We saw here through StruBIM still. Let me do one example here through Cype Connect. Okay, let's come back here to Cype Connect. For example, here I have one node that is very common. This node that is actually one column and two bins. So I have here C1, a continuous column, and then I have B1 and B2. Okay, a very common situation. So let's use this this node as an example to see how we work with the new operation that we've implemented in this version. Okay, so let me open the connection editor here. Here we have this interface here. In this case, an empty list, no operations yet. Of course, a lot of clashes here because the node was not treated yet. Okay, let me just change here to have some more space. And the new feature actually is this new button here. Okay, the new lateral plate operation. Okay, actually the plates that we will introduce using this option, it was possible to introduce this plate in the previous version. The difference is that it was necessary to combine different operations. For example, combining trim operations, plate operations, adjust operations, bolts, to create the lateral plate. Now it's going to be easier. It's like a macro. It's one single operation. So let's click here. We can see that one operation was introduced here, one operation that is called lateral 1. And now let's set how this operation, the parameters of this operation. Okay, so as always here at Cype Connect or StruBIM still, when we don't know how to use an operation, the main rule is going to be always the same. Just follow the order that you see here. Okay, so here there are a lot of parameters. So start by filling these parameters from the top and then go to the bottom of this window. Okay, so in this case, the first thing that the operation asks to us is which elements do you want to connect. So which section you want to join to a second section. In this case, I would like to connect the B1 bin, for example, the bin 1 element, okay, to the C1, for example, okay? And then I must tell to the software which part of this B1 I would like to connect to the C1. For example, I'd like to connect the web of B1 to the nearest face that the software find of C1, or for example, the top flange or the bottom flange or the web. Okay, in this case, the nearest face. Okay, so here now I can see this plate. The plate was introduced. I already have here a kind of connection. Of course, we must change a lot of things here, but we have this element here. Okay. All right. So the first section it's already done. Let's go to the second section, that is defining the material of this plate. So we can go to our library of materials, the library that we set it before, or we can add a new material if we want. Okay, in this case I already have in my library. Let me select one of these materials here, S235 for example, and okay, we have the material of this plate. Then let's go to this section here, the geometry of this plate. Okay, for example, what is the thickness of the plate? Let's work with 12 millimeters for example. Okay, as you can see, each parameter I change, automatically we see the difference here in the preview of this connection. Then we have here depth, overlap, spacing, and displacement in the I direction. Okay, what are these parameters? They are actually the geometry of this plate. Here in this little button, we have a help, and we can see what is exactly the overlapping. It's this parameter here. The depth, that is this parameter here. The spacing, that is actually this little space here, and also the displacement in the I direction, that is based on the axis of the bar in this case. Okay, so yeah, let's change some parameters here. For example, let's start with the depth. Let me see something here. What's the size of this beam? It's like 30 centimeters. Okay, so let's add a plate that is like 200 millimeters, like this, for example. Okay, The overlap, let's maintain 100, but the spacing, let's change it like for 1 centimeters, like 15 millimeters, like this, just a little depth here, or maybe 20 millimeters, okay? So here we have a plate that could work, okay? Like maybe for a pinned connection, something like that, okay? All right, so the geometry of the plate is it's introduced, okay? Let's change here the overlap. Let's put a little bit less, like 80 millimeters, like that, okay? All right, now we have the plate. The next section is bolts, okay? So let's add some bolts. The first one I will add here in the origin, or in this exactly center of this plate, okay? So the coordinates for this bolt is 0 and 0. Then I will duplicate the first bolt to create the second. Here I will change just the one of the directions. So let's add like 5 millimeters, a displacement of 5 millimeters, or maybe 60 millimeters, like this. And I'll do the same with the second. I'll duplicate the second to create the third, and I'll just change here to minus 60, for example. And then we have the third one here, okay? So very easy to introduce these bolts here. But we must select the type of bolt. Again, the type of bolt could be based in the library that we already loaded to the software, including the diameter that we want to work, or we can also create a new bolt here. We usually work creating these libraries before, because then we can guarantee the quality of our models. If every time we need to add a bolt or a weld or a plate, we create a new material, probably we will, in some places we can have mistakes. So it's important to work creating these libraries before, and then just select from this button here. It's going to be much easier and more precise, okay? This is just a good practice, okay? So here the material again, let me select one material to this bolt. And here it's a bolt, so we can select if the execution of this bolt is going to be on site or at workshop. So when this bolt will be introduced, because according to the selection, then we will have different materials lists. We have different drawings then to then execute this connection, okay? In this case, by default, the weld option is activated. It's because we have these welds here connecting the plate to the section. We can deactivate if we want, okay? It depends on what we are doing. And we can select here also how the characters of these welds. The same situation that we have to the weld operation that is somewhere here, or the other plates that we have, the adjust, the end plate, when we also can add welds, okay? So with this little operation, just one operation, just setting all the parameters, we created this lateral plate. Very easy to create, no problems here, okay? So yeah, very, very easy, okay? Once we have the first one thing that I think it's very interesting is create the second one. For example, one thing could be duplicating the lateral one to create the lateral two, and then changing just the profiles that are connected. So the lateral one was connecting the B1 to C1. So if I select here lateral 2, I can now select B2 to C1, and easily I have the second connection, okay? If I wanna have the plates in the same size, okay? One thing that I can do is go to B2, and here, for example, change to the back face, and then I'll have this situation, okay? One thing that we can do, very easy. Another thing that we can do, let me delete this one, the lateral 2, just let's come back to the previous situation. Let's imagine here, we would like to have a connection that is a little bit more rigid. Let's imagine that besides this plate, we wanna add some plates connecting not just the web of the section, but also the flanges, the top and the bottom flange to C1, for example. To do that, we can duplicate, for example, the first operation. In this case, maintaining the connection of B1, not the web, but for example, the top flange with C1 again, okay? So we have this situation. Of course, the geometry here is gonna be different, but imagine that the thickness is the same, but for example, the depth could be like, I don't know, in this case, 150, and the overlap like 200 or 250, okay? something like that. Maybe it's too much, 200, okay? 200, the bolts, they are different. So yeah, let's change some things. The 0, 0, I will delete. This 60, let's change for, I don't know, 50, just to take a look, or minus 50 here. Let's take a look if it works. Yeah, I think it's okay. Let's add some more bolts. For example, let's add 6 bolts. We have 2. So this one, I will add also a displacement here. So 100 is too much. Let's do with 60, for example. Let's duplicate this guy. And let's add one more here, like minus 50. So here we have a list with 4 bolts. The bolt number 3, I will duplicate it to create the bolt number 5. That's going to be minus 60, like that. And this one, the 5, I will duplicate to create number 6. That is going to be minus 50. Okay, just adding the coordinates, I can add all the bolts here. Okay, all the other parameters could be the same. So the same material to the plate, the same type of bolt, the same thickness, the same type of welds. Or if we need, we can change the bolts, we can change the thickness, we can change the material. Okay, it depends on each situation. Okay, but as you can see, most of the work that I had to create the lateral 1 plate was used to create the lateral 2 plate. Okay, and of course now I can duplicate again the lateral 2 to create the lateral 3 and just change the top flange to the bottom flange, and we have that one. And with just some steps, we transformed our pinned connection in this case, or a single or simple connection, to a more rigid connection, adding more plates. Okay, of course now I could start duplicating the lateral 1 to create the lateral 4 and then connect the B2, okay, instead of B1, and do the same with lateral 2 just changing here the parameters, okay, adding more plates, and the total number of operations in this case would be 6 operations to have the operation complete, or the connection complete, okay, so something like this. Okay, there's another way to do it. This is very simple because here we have lateral plates, so this operation is very useful. But imagine the situation is more complicated. Imagine that we must add more elements, stiffeners, we must add more welds, bolts, we must add modify the corners of the plates, the profiles. Could be something more complicated than that. Okay, so there is a new feature of this update that could be useful. To show how it works, I will show you another way to create the connection of B2 to C1 using the information from B1 to C1. But let's imagine that could be more complicated. Okay, so let's do something here. Let me put here again the 6. Let me show you how I can show you. So here the B2. Okay, we have this situation. We can export, of course, these operations to the library, but let's imagine that I would like to export just this part here, the part that is the connection between B1 and C1, but I would like to ignore the connection of B2 to C1. Okay, so in the previous version, to export it, it was necessary to export everything, the complete list of operations. Okay, so if I just exporting using this button, these 6 operations will be exported. Okay, from this version, this new feature is that now I can select just part of my operations. For example, I select the operation 1, 2, and 3, and by using this button, actually, I will export a combination of operations that will be partial. Okay, so let's export this one. I'll call it connection bin column. Okay, column. And I will call it type 1, for example, type 1. Okay, so if I accept it, okay, now I can go to my library. Here I have the list of connections that I have in my project in my computer, I can see here that the one that I created is here. But look at the difference. As I selected just some operations which affects the C1 and B1, the B2 connection is not here. Okay, it's not here. So I exported part of my connection, part of the instructions or the operations of my connection. Why this could be interesting? The first thing is because if I started creating a model that is the most complex model that I have in my project, then I can start exporting parts of this complex model to then create other connections that are more that are simpler than the complex one. Okay. The second thing is I can use this combination of operations to then add other parts of the same connection that I have. For example, let's imagine that we don't have this lateral 4, 5, and 6 operations. Okay, and instead of duplicating these guys here, we can import, for example, the connection bin column that we've created here. Okay, we can keep the previously defined operations to not delete those that we've created before, because it's a different pin. Okay, and here what we will do is, in my library, the B1 it's equivalent actually to the B2 of my project. So C1 is C1, B1 of my library it's going to be the B2 of my project. Okay, or of my connection. And by accepting here, let's see what happens. Now we have 3 new operations based on the operation that we've created here in the connection library. Okay, so this is a new feature. Now you can export and import parts of your operations, part of your list of operations to the connection library. Okay, so that's very useful. Now you don't have to think about it's going to be easier to then create connections that are derivated. They are created from other connections using this new button that is here. Okay, export selected operations to the library.